Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
It's the 8th of September 2025, and 20 years ago today was the first day of the final test of the 2005 Ashes, which, of course, we've been covering on this podcast and also made videos about as well. Simon, where were you on the 8th of September 2005?
I was sitting in a studio in Chiswick, waiting to do the highlights for Vodafone on the final test of that summer, as I had been all summer, all previous ball test matches. So,
Yeah.
like you, I watched every single ball of the 2005 Ashes, as indeed I've done of this one-day series, which we're going to talk about. That's just finished in England and South Africa. We're going to get onto that in just a moment. Yeah, so I watched every ball of that series as well.
Yeah, great.
You
Well,
were
we'll talk
sitting in
about
your
that, as you
truck.
say. I was sitting in my truck. Yeah, I mean, as you say, we'll talk about the one-day series in a bit, but we're just going to refer briefly to that moment 20 years ago when England set out to try and regain the Ashes for the first time for 18 years or so. And as I said, we've been covering that series with a series of videos which are on the Crickverse, which is our Substack site. And you can go to that. If you go to the Crickverse, if you Google the Crickverse, you can watch those videos which we made about that series. I've got a diary actually of that series as well, and the diary entry for the Thursday, the 8th of September is quite funny. I say the first day of the final test, huge anticipation. England are poised to win the Ashes for the first time since 1987. It is the last sight of live cricket on terrestrial TV. Well, certainly Test cricket, after more than 50 years of uninterrupted coverage, and it's also Richie Benaud's final match commentating on British television. England were humbled 1-0 by Northern Ireland last night, so that was September the 7th, 2005. So it seems amazing, doesn't it, to think about that. And the Sun divides its front page in two. The top half proclaims Ashes heroes and contains a pledge from Freddie Flintoff that the team will leave no stone unturned. The bottom half of the Sun back page is headlined "Taxi for Ericsson." So obviously England's football was being sort of almost subsumed by England cricket at the time. And that first day, Thursday, the 8th of September, was an absolute red letter day for one man, maybe an unheralded member or hero of that 2005 Ashes team, Andrew Strauss. He made his second century of the series.
That's a good shot, well played. Straight into the gap at backward square leg. It takes him to 97. Oh, good shot. That's his 100. This has been a superb knock. That's Mrs. Strauss there, and boy, she's delighted.
I think that was the most pressure I ever batted in, and we were losing wickets at the other end. So to go on and get 100 that day and play very fluently was an extraordinarily satisfying performance from me, and definitely one that I was very proud of.
Okay, so you can watch that whole series, 2005 Ashes, that we put together, video series on the Crickverse on Substack. We'd love you to join us, and we'll be adding lots of extra content onto that site as well over the due course over the next few weeks. So back to reality. And of course, the Ashes is only 3 months away, actually. And I suppose that's in the back of England's mind all along. But Simon, you were at the three one-day internationals. We'll review them. But how much sort of talk was there of the Ashes in those three one-dayers?
Well, I think it's always on your mind. But I mean, first things first, it's about England trying to find their feet in one-day international cricket after a wretched run of performances. 2019 was their high watermark, and since then they've gone downhill. So they're looking to rebuild. New captain in Harry Brook. He won his first series against West Indies. He lost his second against South Africa, and they lost a tight game at Lords on Thursday, 5 runs. Some people said actually wasn't quite as tight as the final scoreline suggested. Well, I would say that if you get to the final ball and you hit a 6, and that means you take it to a super over, I think that's still a pretty tight finish. England weren't far away at Lords, but not quite good enough. I mean, there is a bit of precedent here in South Africa playing poorly in the final match of a series. They did it against Australia when they were hammered in Mackay. This one was absolute shellacking. I mean, to such an extent, it was the biggest ever margin of defeat in a one-day international. That's obviously batting first. I mean, there have been plenty of matches that have been won by 10 wickets. But what a margin of victory, 342 runs. What did we learn? I think that's what we're going to discuss. What did we learn? What are the pointers? What can England do to improve? I mean, it is another series loss. There's a bizarre situation afterwards where South Africa were hammered by 342 runs. Their coach described it as embarrassing. Their captain was injured, and yet they were lifting the trophy at the end for winning the series. I mean, it's so weird to have a situation like that, but it happens from time to time. But the bottom line is South Africa won the series. It was another series defeat for England. I suppose if you win the last game, there's that recency bias, isn't there? That things are improving. But were South Africa sort of a bit underdone in the sense that did it really? Is there that sort of drive when you've already won the series to keep going? Perhaps not, as we saw that in Australia. And England were desperate to win, absolutely desperate to win after what happened previously in the series.
Mm. I suppose South Africa, how much superior were South Africa in those first 2 games? I suppose really, if you look at it, the first game, England just were totally undercooked. Brendan McCullum said it's the first time he's ever been to a series where he was meeting the players on the morning of the match because the 100 had only just finished and they hadn't had time to properly prepare and gather and so on. And it just shows how much preparation is important, planning and so on. You always need to plan more for one-day internationals in a way than Test cricket because it's a short game. You've got no sort of second opportunity or anything, and you've got to make the most of your resources. I mean, we'll get on to this in a bit, but bowling, you've got to get those bowling matchups right, haven't you? Whereas in Test cricket, if someone kind of generates a good spell, you can leave them on, and or someone's not bowling well, you can take them off, and there's more flexibility in Test cricket. Whereas in one-day cricket, you've got to be quite precise, haven't you, about when people come on and when they go off and what batting order you use and so on. So I can sort of see why preparation is important. But of course, South Africa themselves have come back from Australia only a few days before. I suppose the different thing for them was jet lag rather than lack of preparation because they played a one-day series against Australia. So in a way, they started the series with an advantage and they made it tell in that first game. So was the second game perhaps the best evaluation of the strength of the 2 teams?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. In a way, it probably was. I mean, it was a decent pitch, 2 teams going hard at it. Look, this England side has got a lot of quality in it. It's, I think, mainly in their batting rather than their bowling. I think they're a little bit thin on bowling. They've got Rashid, who's obviously a quality bowler, Joffra Archer as well, who's a quality bowler, and his re-emergence this summer has been a major bonus for England. And talk about the Ashes context. I mean, that's there's sort of minor excitement surrounding him as far as the Ashes are concerned. Let's not go overboard, but it is definitely encouraging, especially what we saw yesterday. So yeah, perhaps Thursday was the best test, and it was a very tight game of cricket. I mean, I know South Africa are really looking forward to their 2027 World Cup at home and feel this could be their chance. I mean, they reached finals in white ball cricket, on semi-finals in white ball cricket of late. They've won the World Test Championship, and there's a sort of resurgence in South African cricket for one reason and another, and so they are planning for that. So you look at them and think, well, how strong are they? Well, to win in Australia, to win in England, one-day series back to back, I mean that really encouraging for them. So yeah, and to win at Lords on Thursday to win the series, I think was significant. They played pretty well. What they did do on Thursday was exposing England's lack of a 5th bowler. And of course, what happened yesterday, I mean, the best way to take out the 5th bowler equation for England is to score a massive score and bowl them out in 20 overs. And you don't even have to use your 5th bowler, but you're not going to be able to do that very often. But there is a kind of a template there in that if you can bat a team out of the game, then almost that 5th bowler does become irrelevant. Even if South Africa batted well yesterday, the chance of them scoring 415 to win, negligible. So that's one way, and that's how England teams of the past have done it, haven't they? They've just batted teams out of the match by scoring huge runs in the first innings. So yeah, that's one way of going, and that's kind of England. That's kind of England's strategy, it seems to me. We'll get them with the bat if we don't get you with the ball, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've got a problem with that. And for two reasons really. One is if you look at England's success 2019, that side, Owen Morgan's side, 2015 to 2019, they always played five bowlers, almost invariably, sometimes six. So if you look at the team that won the final, for instance, Chris Wokes and Joffra opened the bowling, Mark Wood and Liam Plunkett came on first and second change, and then there was Adil Rashid, and often Moeen Ali played in that side as well, and they had other specialist bowlers. So, that was the blueprint they used, and it was effective, especially in England, where, the ball does seam around. You need top class operators to be able to exploit that. Or, another factor with the importance of, I think, a five-man attack is you've got two new balls. And so, both of those opening bowlers have got a new ball in their hand, and those balls are quite hard and shiny for 25 overs of the match, because they're only 12 overs old each. So, I think you want top class operators using those balls from both ends. And the third element of this is that you have to have five bowlers, don't you? You don't have to have six batsmen in one-day cricket, because the top four can do all the work, maybe. I mean, I'm just talking kind of hypothetically. There's no restriction on batsmen. A guy can bat the whole innings, but a bowler can't. A bowler can only bowl 10 overs. And firstly, you surely need five proper, serious bowlers to bowl those 10 overs. There's no escape. You can't suddenly say our opening bowler can bowl an extra 4, he bowls 14, so we only have to find 6 from our part-timers. You can't do that. And, the other factor about that is that you want those top bowlers to be operating as much as you can throughout the innings to put pressure on the opposition batters. So I just think it's completely illogical to use only 4 specialist bowlers, and you might get away with it in India, say, where the pitches on 50 over cricket are batting friendly mainly. But in South Africa, where the next 50 over World Cup is, similar to England, there'll be some seam movement, and I just think you need 5 bowlers. Otherwise, you're just trying to get away with it. And teams spot that, and they say, well, okay, you've got 4 specialist bowlers, and then you've got a couple of part-timers, we'll just focus on them, and we'll take them down. And South Africa did in that first game, absolutely smashed
in the second
Bethell
game.
and Jacks. They smashed them, didn't they? And it's an immediate area of weakness that you're exposing yourself to. So I just think it's an illogical theory, and it's bound to fail regularly.
Yeah, so I thought on Thursday in that second game that England desperately lacked a fourth seamer. And you're right, in English conditions, I think there are times, probably more often than not, when you do want a fourth pace bowler, and they might have won the game. And what they were hoping, of course, is they could limit South Africa, and someone like Jacks coming at number 7 could prove to be a match winner. And that's the balance they're looking at. Well, that's the situation they're looking at, aren't they? They're saying we're going to play 7 batters, Jacks who can bowl and bat. He's more of a batter than a bowler, and what he gives us with the bat is going to trump what he doesn't give us necessarily with the ball. But I think in that instance, it didn't really work on Thursday. So the thing is, the problem with this is you can only play with the hand that you've got, the cards that you've got. So who is that potential bowler? You need a pace bowler who can bat. Well, there is one, isn't there? But he's had a kind of an odd international career where he's been the flair of the month, and then he's been jettisoned of late, and then he's come back strongly again in the 100, an excellent 100, and that is Sam Curran, who is, an interesting cricketer. We've debated him so many times. What is he? What are his real strengths? Is he a batter who bowls, or a bowler who bats, or is he not quite good enough at both? Or is he, if you just let him go, he eventually will produce the performances you need. So he is the option, and he's now been added to England's T20 side for the T20 series against South Africa. So he is someone that could potentially do that role. He's got that left arm option as well. So, is there anyone else who could fulfill that role?
Well, I haven't thought deeply about if there's anyone else. I think Sam Curran is a very good option. I like Luke Wood, actually. I know he doesn't bat, obviously like Curran, but another left armer with good skills, can take wickets. I think left arm is very important. It's something England have lacked. It's something they had in the past at various times and haven't at the moment. And I think the flaw in the argument about, say, a Will Jacks at number 7 is that I know he's a fantastic striker of the ball, but he could easily be out first or second ball. Batting in the lower order is largely a lottery. You can come off, but you might not. And if you don't come off, then you're immediately almost a passenger because your bowling is secondary and not that effective generally. So you almost become a redundant player, whereas a guy who bowls properly and can bat, I think is more valuable. I mean, someone like Plunkett was the perfect option there because he was a really, he was a top bowler who took wickets, who didn't care about being bowling the sort of donkey overs in the middle of the innings. But he could also bat, couldn't he? And he could bat very effectively in one-day cricket. So he could come in and smack 20 in, 8 balls or something. In fact, he tied one game, didn't he, with a 6 off the last ball at Trent Bridge. So, I just think England have got that balance completely wrong. Curran, for me, absolute banker. I know he's had, and I did say banker there with a B. He has had a bit of an up and down time after being man of the series in the World T20 in Australia. Then his star waned a bit, but he's got massive talent. But I don't think I've seen a left-hand batter hit the ball so cleanly, so regularly. In the 100, in Blast, in for England. He's got an incredible ability to just smash it miles with a minimum amount of effort. And his bowling is not always the best, but he offers that different angle. He's got lots of variety. He's got good composure under pressure. He likes those pressure moments. I just don't understand why they haven't played him, much more regularly. I mean, his one drawback, I suppose, is he's short. And therefore, he's not 90 miles an hour and he's not 6'4". Therefore, he lacks those sort of key elements that you want as a fast bowler. He doesn't have either height or extreme pace. So, I can see he's limited in that sense, but he's got other skills and dimensions to his bowling, and I just don't get why they don't use him all the time.
Well, I think he's had a difficult time, hasn't he? When he's played international cricket, he had a dip. I think he was going around the park not scoring runs, and in the end they said, "Well, we need to look somewhere else and see if there's anyone better. There are better options." Well, they've now gone back to him. He's forced his way back in. Had an excellent 100, forced his way back into the side, which is what you want a player to do, isn't it? You want a player who has been left out to say, "Right, am I going to get my place back?" And so it's up to him now to impress when he gets his opportunities. I don't know whether England will necessarily change their policy. So they go to New Zealand, is their next assignment in white ball cricket. They play a T20 series and a one-day international series in New Zealand. It's a kind of an Ashes build-up. And they have to fit these series in because of the schedule. And so it sort of works. You have people playing some cricket, some competitive cricket. And they don't want to play all those sort of state games in Australia. They don't want to do that. So it's kind of the next best thing. And they've got that match against the Lions as their build up in Australia to the Ashes. So yes, they've got some. That's the next time. They've got some competitive cricket. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Whether they do change the balance of the side. I mean, Jack is an interesting cricketer. He's clearly talented, but you've got to have a system, a balance, a team that works the conditions in which you're playing. And they do have those other options. I mean, you think about spinning options. They do have Rashid, Bethell can fill in, and Root can fill in as well as if you have Sam Curran. So you do have plenty. You have a more varied attack, and perhaps because in the current England side, I mean, effectively they've got 4 spinning options, which, as you say, might work well, say in India or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Pakistan or somewhere like that. But does it work so well in England? Will it work as well in South Africa when they get there for the World Cup in 2027? In fact, this time, in 2 years' time, we'll be on the verge. We'll be building up towards the 2027 World Cup in South Africa.
So, what are England's sort of positives from that series? I mean, obviously, let's reflect on that last game. Joe Root, his 58th international 100. It's just incredible, isn't it? He's a machine. And lots of singles, actually, lots of kind of deft touches. I think England ran 31 twos in that total of 414, which is impressive. And
It's that
Root
sort of
and
ground, Yoz. That sort of
Yes, the
ground, isn't
big
it?
ground. Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
it just shows you do have to be adaptable. Lovely partnership with Jacob Bethell. I didn't realise actually that. I mean, Joe Root afterwards saying that he'd known Jacob Bethell since he was 8 because their fathers batted together for Sheffield Collegiate. That's an amazing story, really. Because I mean, obviously Jacob Bethell was brought up in the West Indies, so I didn't realise his dad played for Sheffield Collegiate with Matt Root, who was a good cricketer. Joe's father. So it was lovely to see that partnership, and the way they dovetailed together was brilliant, wasn't it? And Bethell's first international 100, much has been made. Well, first professional 100, much has been made of that. The second youngest man to make 100 for England in any format after David Gower, and actually elements of David Gower about his innings, I thought, and about his batting generally. Obviously, Gower didn't come down the wicket and sort of bunt spinners back over their head for 6, as Bethell does. But the offside shots and even some of the pull shots have a sort of elegance about them that are similar to Gower. Do you agree?
To some extent.
So
I
that
think,
means no, then.
Well, I think I can see what you're saying, that they're both left-handed. They both play tremendous. I think David was more of an elegant, orthodox elegance, I would say, with David. I mean, he did not give himself so much room, and Bethell often gives himself room, as you say. Goes leg side, tries to hit it through the offside, goes down the ground, plays the pull shot, and they're physically different as well. I mean, I would say David taller than Jacob Bethell, but I mean, what they both are is two left-handers who are very talented at a very young age, and there have been some doubts, haven't there, about Bethell? I've seen people say, is he? He's overrated. He's not as good as everyone says he's going to be, and all that stuff. But look, he's got 100 for England at 21, and that takes some doing, doesn't it, to score 100 at that age?
Listen, I respect my daughter's view on this. She was a prodigy actually as a young player, and was in the sort of, just to give her a bit of authenticity. I mean, she was in the England under 16 side, women's side, a few years ago, and she saw Bethell when he was playing his first match, I think, in the 100, and she just saw him and said, "Wow, he only made about 15 not out at the end of the innings. Look at that timing. Look at that, balance." And she was the one who also pointed out Jamie Smith, even before he played for Surrey, having played against him in a school match. And I just think Bethell has something special about
It's
it.
time to get her to replace you on the podcast, Jon.
I think that's absolutely right. She's far too busy. But in fact, interesting that the reason why England have put so much faith behind him isn't just to do with his clear natural ability, but his attitude as well. The fact that they keep going on about his planning, how meticulous he is, how focused he is, how ambitious he is. And how he's a sponge, sort of absorbing all sorts of information, and batting with Joe Root for a partner of 182 would have done him a huge amount of value. I mean, there's no better way to learn than to bat with the master at the other end and meet in between overs and watch how he approaches the building of an innings and construction of an innings. So perhaps it was no coincidence in a way that Bethell's first 100 was made in company with the man who's scored 58 of them at international level.
And Joe Root as well celebrating. I mean, rushed right down the pitch, past the stumps at the far end to celebrate with him, to give him a hug. He didn't just walk up and to leave him to his moment. There was some elation, shared elation from Joe Root as well, which was lovely to see. I was interested by something Alistair Cook said when we were reviewing the game yesterday. I said to him, this guy, 21, there's been a lot of focus on him this summer, the fact that he hasn't played, the fact he played in the IPL, and it kind of hindered his summer, really. And he's had a difficult time of it. I said, when you see the playing innings like that today, albeit against the South African side, already won the series, but, you still got to do it in international cricket, and the there were bowlers trying to get you out. Do you see him as a kind of nailed on star of the future? And he said, white ball cricket definitely, to be decided in red ball cricket. I don't. He said that there's not enough evidence yet in red ball cricket. Although, of course, we did see him play well in New Zealand, which would suggest that he can translate it into red ball cricket as well. Just one thing I would say, of course, is that he was badly dropped on 42 by Nandra Berger at mid-on. It was a catch you'd expect a player to take. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the drop of Bretsky off of Jamie Smith, which is one of the biggest goobers I think I've seen in international cricket. It was an extraordinary drop, that. But so Bethell was dropped, so it could have been a very different story. The other thing as well, Yoz, when I was looking back at the game yesterday and reviewing it and just picking out some of the highlights, obviously, there were lots of things. There were lots of storylines to focus on. So the highest ever defeat of a team in a one-day international, a massive score, 342 runs, the final score. Bethell's first 100, Archer's eye-catching bowling. I almost forgot Joe Root. I mean, that just shows he's so sort of kind of like dependable, reliable, and you just kind of expect him to churn them out. I'd almost sort of forgot his innings, but yeah, there he is again. And the other thing to note as well with him, 1,000 international runs in the summer for the 5th time. It's been done 20 times in an international summer. He's done it 5 times. So a quarter of those times. Okay, it's a bit different these days because there are lots more white ball games, both T20 and one-day internationals, to mix in with the test matches, and they generally play 1 or 2 test matches more perhaps than they used to do. But it just shows the relentless, remorseless quality of Joe Root.
And he kicked off, didn't he, the one-day summer with that innings at Cardiff.
Brilliant innings,
which was he was rightfully named as England's one-day player of the series of the summer. That innings at Cardiff was so good because it was under so much pressure. I think it was a very hot day actually as well. And but he, England kept losing wickets in the run chase, but he kept up the tempo and won the match for England. And he scored half the runs, 166 he got, didn't he? And it was just absolutely fantastic. And it showed his mental resilience as well. And I think that's why he would have said about Bethell, to be decided how well he'll be able to accomplish the same level of attainment in red ball cricket or test cricket, because it does challenge you mentally as much as it does physically. And physically, obviously, Bethell is a fantastic athlete. You can see him in the field. Mentally, we don't know, do we? I mean, you just don't know at this point when you're 21 how you're going to handle it. You don't even know it yourself. So no one else can judge it either. And there'll be so many little hurdles and little trips and pitfalls that you might fall into, you might avoid. You've got to come out the other side of those. A 5-test series, for instance, which is what makes it all the more fascinating, is, those duels you get where a bowler gets the wood on you and you've got to try and figure it out. You think back to sort of Glenn McGrath against Michael Atherton, 19 times he dismissed him. There have been so many other instances of a bowler having a batter on toast. Actually, it was nice that Andrew Strauss in that 2005 second final test match, when he got his second 100 of the series, it was nice that he managed to sort of put that moniker that Shane Warne had on him, Darryl, as in Darryl Cullinan, that he kept calling him because that was Shane Warne's favourite bunny, and he finally managed to sort of almost cast that Darryl label aside with that second 100. But it must have been tough for Strauss to overcome not just the physical skill of Warne, but that constant tormenting as well. And Bethell will get the same.
Yeah, just going back to that match in Cardiff, you brought it up, that route 166. I'm looking at my notes here, and you said England lost wickets, and it was a remarkable win for them. They were chasing 309 to win. They were 2 for 2 and 133 for 5. So you'd think, odds on West Indies to win the match. Guess who helped him out there in that partnership that produced that England victory? Will Jacks, batting at number 7, made 49, and they put together a really significant stand of well over 100. So you can see, you can see the benefit of someone like Jacks at number 7. Although I look at the combined bowling figures there with Jacob Bethell and Will Jacks in that first game, they bowled 10 overs to a team them, and they went 2 for 91. So 110 it was the other night, 112 the other night, and that one was was 91. So you can see that vulnerability. You know what is it? What is that phrase? What you lose on the swings, you gain on the roundabouts, and that's the decision that England have got to take in the future, and that trying to weigh it up and what works best for them. I think it's one of the great things about a cricket team, isn't it? You're always trying to find that balance, especially in one-day cricket, as you say, trying to find that balance between the batting and the bowling, and how many all-rounders you need, and whether you do load it in favour of the batting, and then saying we're just going to bat them out of the game, or we chase whatever they score, or whether you. In the ideal world, of course, you have quality batters and quality bowlers. I mean, if England had the level of quality in their bowling that they have in their batting, then you'd say they'd be right up there as potential favourites for the World Cup. But they don't have that, and they are. I think their bowling is quite vulnerable, and and we've seen them being defeated quite regularly. And then sometimes the batting will fail because they do go hard at it and they do give you a chance, as we saw at Headingley in that opening match, albeit a game in which, I mean, the preparation was a bit lacking, wasn't it? Really, it's not great to have a one-day international 2 days after the 100 final where some of your players are involved. It's just not good. It needs to be a proper focus for a one-day series. We should talk, Jos, before we go. We should talk about a bit more about Joffra Archer as well. In fact, he played all 3 games as well. I mean, his body seems okay. It's one of those kind of like touchwood situations. He was saying afterwards, his body feels great. If England can get the Joffra Archer of yesterday onto the field in Australia, then clearly that will give them more of a chance. I mean, he was irresistible yesterday. It was
he found
spell.
that. It was a fantastic spell. I mean, he found that length that really helped him at Southampton. That length on other grounds isn't necessarily as effective, but there's that bit of extra bounce. There's a bit of extra bounce at Southampton. And if you just back of the length with his very high action and obviously fast release, he just gets that really awkward bounce into the rib cage from not very short. And it's very difficult to play at that pace. And that's where he really caused the problems. On other pitches, that length doesn't get up as high. It will only get up to sort of just above the waist. And it's a bit easier to handle. And I think also, people will be very excited. Oh, Joffra Archer, he's going to win the Ashes for us. I just would caution by saying in Test cricket, you bowl that length. Batters can either leave it because it's going way over the stumps, or they can, if it's not bouncing much, they can pull it. And, he's a fantastic bowler, but if you don't do something with the ball other than extra bounce, you're not necessarily going to be that devastating. And so I would like to see him still. He's brilliant to left-handers because he gets that natural shape away from the left-handers from over the wicket. And he's very difficult to play. And he produced a lovely ball to Ryan Rickleton, good length. Nick caught behind. He did the same to Jaiswal and Rishabh Pant in the Test series. Fantastic. He's got to find a way of getting right-handers out with something other than extra lift into the chest. And, he got a couple of good wickets yesterday with the balls that, bounced awkwardly and were gloved the batsman. But I just think in a Test match on those slightly more even Australian pitches, he's got to find that ball that leaves the right-hander from a good length as well to be really exceptional. I don't want to sort of, cast aspersions on him because, it's fantastic. His comeback has been brilliant. But I'd still just like to see him get a bit more movement away from the bat. I know that, more bowlers these days are nipping it back and, Cummins, who we'll come on to in a moment, is a master of that, getting the ball to nip back to the right-handers. But he can get it to leave the right-handers as well. And that's the one thing that Archer needs to find, I think, just to make him, super, super effective.
Yeah.
But excellent against left-handers. And yesterday, absolutely superb.
Yeah, very sensible voice of reason there, yours. I think that's right, isn't it? That it's we shouldn't go overboard, but it's encouraging. I think that's the point. You think from where potentially he was at the start of the season to where he is now, there is some potential there for him to play a significant part. I asked Alistair yesterday how many matches do you think it's reasonable to expect Archer to play? Alistair Kirk, that is, in the Ashes, and he said 4. So he was
Yeah.
thinking first, second, third, and fifth, something like that,
Mm.
because of the gap between the first and second test and the second and
Yeah.
third test. There is that time to recover. There's kind of like eight days, something like that, to get more than a full week, especially if the games are shorter games that don't go full 5 days. But then you get into that back end of intensity where Adelaide, Melbourne, and Sydney are quite close together. So the idea of playing all three of those, so that, they'll have to plan that very carefully about how they do that. But yeah, look, it's a better situation as far as England are concerned than potentially it was. Yeah, just let's touch on Pat Cummins, Yoz. We don't totally know, do we? But he's got this back issue that's not a stress fracture. It's kind of like the stage before you get a stress fracture if you keep on playing. How concerning is it for Australia to have a situation like that? Was there, is it one of those where it's kind of like a storm now because it's Pat Cummins and there's still plenty of time to rest and recover and then get to work? Or do you think actually, five test matches in 5 intense test matches over 6.5 weeks, that's asking quite a lot for a guy who has had a back issue in after the West Indies series?
Well, I think it's a massive issue, and I think he's as important to Australia as Stokes is to England. He's the leader. He's their best bowler. He's their most consistent bowler. He's their most dangerous bowler. He's a fantastic cricketer. He's got a great attitude, and I think if you get, the problem is, when I was lucky, I never got a back injury. I got knee injuries, and if you get an injury when you're youngish, there will always be scar tissue associated with it. If you have a bad injury which needs surgery or rehab or whatever, there'll be scar tissue there, and you'll be able to overcome that and play on, and then it'll recur at some point. And I think this is what's happened. I had a knee operation when I was 24. I actually was told I wouldn't play again, and I came back from it and played fine for another five years. Then it recurred. Then I had to have another operation on it, and each time it's just a bit weaker. And each time when you feel it sort of niggling, as say Mark Wood has found with his own fitness issues, each time you sort of think, oh, can I carry on here? I'm not sure. How bad is it? How much time off do I need? You start to sort of feel a bit uncertain and hesitant. You maybe don't go for the faster ball, put the maximum effort in quite as much as you might have previously. You become a bit more fragile, I suppose. You become a bit more nervous about recurrences that might be there. So I think it is a big problem. Obviously, we don't know how severe it is, but they rely so massively on him. And I hope for the sake of him and the series that he's okay. But it's a big advantage to England if he can't play, all the games.
Yeah, obviously there's captain there. Steve Smith could fill in as skipper for them, so they've got an obvious replacement. He's got a lumbar bone stress injury. So I stuck that into AI before we came on, just to see what it came up with. He said a lumbar bone stress injury can be a serious condition as it's a precursor to a stress fracture, which can lead to the bones slipping out of place. So if left untreated, these injuries can progress and cause significant pain and reduced mobility, potentially requiring physical therapy, bracing, or in rare cases, surgery. Early diagnosis and treatment, including rest and a gradual return to activity, are crucial to prevent worsening of the condition and potential long-term complications. So yeah, they found it. He's going through that period of rest at the moment. And interesting about the Ashes, my hunch from this distance, and we will see what it looks like when we get close to the Ashes and who's fit on, is that that you want everyone to be fit and available, so it's the best against the best. My hunch, though, is that for England to win in Australia or do well in Australia or to challenge Australia, they actually will need a bit of help from injuries to Australia's strong pace bowling unit, to help them along the way. That's one potential route to success in Australia. Without it, if Australia managed to get their main bowlers on the field, then you feel it could be quite tough for England. And I think you probably back Australia's, I would, batters to score enough runs to give their bowlers something to work with, as indeed they did against India last summer. So that's how I'd see it from here. So it is potentially, well, it's interesting and it potentially significant. But like you say, from a sporting contest point of view, you want Archer to be fit, you want Wood to be fit, you want Cummins to be fit, you want Hazelwood to play all the matches, you want the best against the best to have a proper contest, and no one can say afterwards. And also you want Ben Stokes to be fit for all the games as well. So no one can say afterwards, oh well, Pom's only won because we had a half an attack out or whatever. No, there'll be no sympathy for England, of course, if they have all their fast bowlers out and Australia trouts them. It'll be now we won because we're the better side. But you want that, don't you? You want the best against the best.
Yeah, of course you do. Actually, we'll get a lowdown from this situation, I think, perhaps tonight, because our special guest in the world's best cricket club, our virtual cricket club tonight, is Brett Lee, actually, who's joining us, I think, from Dubai. And I'll ask him what he knows about Cummins' injury, what he's experienced himself coming back from various injuries, and also talking about the prospects for the next Ashes. And maybe we'll even look back at the 2005 Ashes as well, because on this day, a few days after today, this would have been about the 12th of September, was the day he tried to bounce out Kevin Peterson, and Peterson hooked him into oblivion, and obviously England retained the Ashes. England regained the Ashes. So I'll talk to Brett Lee about that. You can join us on the World's Best Cricket Club if you go to worldsbestcricketclub.com, worldsbestcc.com. And one other thing we'll talk about later in the week. So we'll be back later in the week. I think we'll call a halt here. But of course, the county championship starts or restarts again today. Lots of interesting games. Do you pick out one? I think next week is the big one, isn't it? Sorry, be
next
not.
week. Surrey versus Notts at the Oval. Let's hope the weather stays fair for that one. So that could potentially be a championship decider. So Surrey take a 9-point lead into this round of matches. So it's still all to play for. Somerset a little bit behind in third place, 26 points behind. I was actually talking to Vic Marks yesterday about this. He said Somerset have still got that inquiry into their pitch for one of their earlier games in the summer hanging over them, so they don't know whether there's going to be a points deduction. That's still to be decided, so we don't quite know.
That was against Durham, wasn't it? That was the Durham game when Beefy Botham got on his high horse about that, saying how outrageous the pitch was. But it'll be interesting to see what happens.
So there's that to be decided. There's actually, before we go, there's just one quick point I wanted to make about the one day, which I hadn't come round to, and it's something which happened in the series that could be a pointer to the future. Of course, that Jacob Bethell in those last two matches batted at number 4, so Brook at 5 and Butler at 6. You think sometimes a player can be lost a bit, a new player can be lost a bit at 6 in a one-day because you not come in for the slog overs or you come in under intense pressure. You come in number 4, of course, you've got a chance to set the course of the match. Actually, do you think that's a really good position for him to bat? And Brook at 5 and Butler at 6. But it saves Butler a bit because he's kept wicket potentially, and also he's a very good finisher. That is a much better top 6 for England. That order. So although it seemed as if it was just for these two games, and the Lord's game it was for him to take on the spinners and England continue the left-hand right-hand combination, but they continued it in Southampton. Do you actually think that's a template for the future? Bethell kind of dismissed it afterwards. Oh no, I'm not going to replace Brookie at 4, he said. But actually, is there something in that? Because you can have that left hand, right hand at the top. You've got Duckett opening, you've got Bethell at 4. It actually breaks that England order up a bit of all the right handers in the middle. So have they kind of stumbled on something there, or do you think they might go back?
I think they have, and may have been a bit of pre-planning. I think you've got to be flexible, but if you think about it, the man who was very much resident in the middle order for a long time for that one-day side, the star of the one-day side in so many ways, Ben Stokes, was left-handed, and he batted at 5, didn't he, most of the time. So to have a left-hand option at 4 or 5, I think is really important. Left-handers just have more advantages in one-day cricket because the ball doesn't swing back at them or anything, and they just tend to get more width than a right-hander does overall, because more bowlers are right-handed and they tend to angle the ball into a right-hand batsman and across a left-hand batsman. So naturally, left-handers have a little bit more scope to free their arms and play shots in one-day cricket. with the white ball not really moving very much. So I think very important to have a key left-hander, really good left-hander that you can bring in at number 4 if Duckett is out, but you could also bring Brook in at number 4 if Duckett's still in. So you've got that left-hand, right-hand combination going all the time. I think it's really important.
Okay, well, it's something to watch for the future of this one-day side, whether they're going to be flexible out or actually whether they think, actually, this might be a formula that works for us in the future. Of course, you want Brook to face quite a lot of overs because he's a talented player as well, but also, he's a good, potentially a good back-end player, isn't he? He's a good last 20, 25 overs player as well. Anyway, we'll see what happens with that one. Look, plenty to talk about, Yoz, all sorts of things we haven't even touched on today. We haven't been together for a while for one reason and another, but we'll be doing regular podcasts as we move inexorably towards the 21st of November, that showdown in Perth.
Yeah, of course. And our next podcast will be looking back at the first or the next round of county championship matches. And as you say, looking ahead again to the Ashes. And if you want to watch that series, recapping, re-dramatising the 2005 Ashes, the brilliant series, which came to its climax this week, you can go to the Crickverse on Substack, and I'll post the link on the podcast notes. So, see you later in the week.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.